Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Adam.
And Leslie.
Welcome to the show, Unemployed AF Dad. Today we're going to be talking about relationships.
All things relationship.
Yeah. And, don't you just hate that saying, happy wife, happy life?
There's a billboard right before you get off the exit
Yes.
that says that for a jeweler. It's so obnoxious on many levels.
Well, for me, you can't depend on your spouse to provide you with happiness, right? Because that's, number one, putting a lot of pressure on the spouse. But number two, you yourself have to be happy with who you are before you can ever depend on someone else to provide you with that happiness as well, right?
One would surmise, yes. But for whatever reason, our culture, I don't know, I feel like we've kind of got like inundated with that. Like your typical husband is the one that is supposed to make you happy. And then if you are happy, then all is well, like within your house and within your marriage. And I feel like that kind of makes the wife out to be kind of a B.
Yeah.
And I don't like that because that's not how women are. And it kind of makes the husband or the other partner out to be kind of like this like doofy puppy that's just like, okay, whatever you need.
I think back to like, movies or TV shows, and you got the group of guys sitting around and they're like, yeah, I had to go buy my wife, this, or I had to, I'm taking her out to dinner tonight because, she needs me to do that to keep her happy. And it's just like, that's how relationships are portrayed in the media. And
like it's a chore.
Like, yeah, I have to do this to keep you happy. I got to buy you things to keep you happy. And
I got to spend time with you to keep you happy.
I'd rather be, Saturdays are for the boys. I'd rather be hanging out with my boys than taking my wife out to dinner and spending money on her. But, going back to relationships, I think for me, I am not a minister. I'm not anything like that. But I did get ordained for a couple weddings that I was fortunate enough to do for my siblings. And during the ceremony, I remember, talking about, marriage is not easy, and life is hard, and your life is hard enough not being married. And then you have, another person in the mix, and then you also, add children, and it just becomes even more and more difficult sometimes for people. But I remember saying to them, right now in this moment, you probably feel like you couldn't love each other anymore. And I told them to, as their marriage progressed, to think back to that day, as times started to get tough, because inevitably they will, right? Your relationship is not always going to be at the top. You're going to go through some struggles, but I remember reminding them to think back to their wedding day and all that love and the emotions that come with your wedding day. Think back to that and remember why you're marrying this person. And I think it's pretty good advice. I can't say that I made that up. I probably found it on the internet somewhere and maybe molded it into my own words. But I also remember saying, a successful and happy relationship, marriage, whatever, is not when it can't be perfect, because two people coming together, we're all imperfect. So there's no such thing as a perfect marriage. But it's when we support and love each other despite our flaws and despite the mistakes that we make. Marriage, it requires you falling in love over and over again. It's a roller coaster, right? You're going to have those peaks and you're going to have those valleys. But it's how you get through those lows. And I think a lot of times you either become stronger or it breaks you.
Yeah, there's so much I could say about that.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm done
well,
talking for a minute.
One, I loved watching you officiate both of those weddings, but especially Andrew and Allie's, just because like one, you had practice.
Not to interrupt, that's my brother and his wife. My first one was a driveway wedding with my sister, and
which
again,
was amazing.
Just so fortunate, so honored to be able to be a part of it. But go on.
But just I remember you practicing it. You were like, "Hey, can I roll this over on you and see what you think, if you have any thoughts or whatever. And I just remember you saying it, and I got so misty because there's so many times that we go to weddings, and it's kind of it's very like surface, and there's this projection of like perfect, right? Like you're getting married and things will all be well, and this is amazing and wonderful, and marriage is really awesome. But I like that you kept it real, and you were like, hey, every day isn't going to be like today. You're not going to wake up every day like 100% in love with your partner. There's going to be times where you might not even feel connected to your partner. There's going to be times when it's going to be really, really hard, and you're going to have to fight, and you're going to have to decide, like, is this worth carrying on for, or where did we begin? And like recall all of those good times that you had, and come back to that very moment. Because I think I mentioned to you when we got married, like I was walking down the aisle and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine loving him any more than I do right now. Like I can't imagine 10 years, 15, 20 years from now. Because like I feel like I can't love Adam any more than I do right now. And it's so crazy because I feel like the love is different now. Like it's different when you go through really hard times together, and your relationship, it changes.
Well, and people change. We are not the same people today that we were 12 years ago when we got married.
Yeah, very much so.
Another thing I didn't want to ever say in the ceremony, don't go to bed mad at each other. Like give, those cliches.
Yeah,
because
no.
You're going to go to bed mad at each other.
I've went to bed mad.
There's some issues, some disputes that you just have to work out over time.
You do.
You can't just sit down and say, like, we're going to get this all solved in one day.
No,
Because
it could take years.
Right.
I mean, there's things
there's a
that
build-up, right?
that we have revisited, years later, and I've said like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not healed from this, and I'm so thankful that you're patient, and you are like, hey, like I'll give you whatever you need, time, space, whatever. I'll do that for you. So that's really important. It's really important.
I mean, communication is key, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of relationships go south very quickly, is they're communicating their feelings to other people, friends, family. This is how I feel. This is why I'm upset. This is what they do that I don't like. But they're not communicating that with each other.
Yeah.
And if they would just sit down and have that conversation, maybe they could, fix those problems. But it's difficult to do that.
I was going to say,
right?
I feel like that's a multi-layered, difficulty or problem. Like, one, was that modeled to you in your parents' relationship? Did they show you how to work out those big problems, or did they just ignore them and then come back the next day and act like everything was right as rain? Two, like, that's a lot of vulnerability to like go up to somebody that you love and that you have put a lot of trust in, and to say, this is how I'm feeling, especially if you don't know how to articulate how you're feeling. Because a lot of us walk around and we just know we've got emotions inside of us, but we don't know what is going on inside of us. And so if you can't even articulate what you're feeling, all you know is like, I'm mad and I can't figure out why, or I'm sad and I can't figure out why.
Well, there's been plenty of times where I've said something to you like, hey, I know that there is an issue that is bothering you. Yeah. I can tell that you're upset. And you have told me, I now's not the time. I'm not ready to talk about it because I'm too emotional. I don't want to say anything that I don't mean. So let's just wait. And I think that's okay. I think sometimes we want to resolve the issue now. I don't want to go another day with you not talking to me or knowing that you're upset with me, but I don't know why. But sometimes you do just have to give people their space. I mean, we're living together. We're with each other all the time. Right. You do need that space, just like you need space from your children. As much as you love them, you do need your space from them. You need your alone time sometimes to focus on you, and that's not a bad thing. It doesn't, because I don't want to spend every last second with you. doesn't mean that I love you any less, but you have to focus on yourself because, again, if you're not happy, you can't expect someone else to make you happy.
Yeah, and kind of going back to like the argument thing of like not wanting to talk at that time, you have to be sensitive to the way that your partner processes things too. Um, if they say, look, I'm not ready to talk, then you need to respect that and say, okay, and maybe even like set a physical time, like, okay, I'm going to come and I'm going to check on you at 5 p.m. and then I'm going to see if you're ready. And give you that time, but to be respectful of that and not just be like, well, I can tell that something's really bothering you and I think we need to get it laid out here and now because that's your anxiety. That's not that person's, anxiety.
And of course, these are things that you learn over time, right?
Yeah.
As you're with someone longer and longer, you know more and more about them.
Oh, yeah.
You know how they, work and how they tick. So it's easier to recognize maybe I should give them their space, or hey, I need to approach them and we need to, because you don't really like confrontation, and how many people really do?
Right.
But sometimes you just have to make that first initial step and say, hey, elephant in the room, what's bothering you? Let's talk about this. Let's try to resolve this.
Yeah. Very much so.
So about a year ago, maybe a little more than that, we bought this best self relationship little card deck, and we thought it'd be really cool to just pick some cards and kind of open up the dialogue and some conversation. And hopefully these are things that some of the people listening are going through and can relate to. But I know for me, it's therapeutic to listen to other married couples talk about the things in their life. So hopefully that will be the same for you guys. So these cards are specific just to relationships. So Leslie, do you want to pick the first one?
Sure.
And I noticed that on the podcast I've been calling you Leslie, which is weird because in real life I don't call you that hardly ever.
We call each other Peanut.
Peanut. If anybody's ever seen the movie Just Friends, there's a scene where the mom's sobbing and she calls her son, oh, Peanut, and for whatever reason that just stuck with us. So but even that, sometimes if I call you your name I call you Les.
Yeah,
not
that's
Leslie.
true.
Just a weird thought I had. Go on.
All right.
Let's start this.
I digress. So the first one says, can our relationship work if we disagree about fundamental issues?
Good question. You go first.
Fundamental issues meaning like politics and religion, and is that what we're categorizing fundamental issues as?
Well, we did say on the trailer that we would never discuss politics on this podcast.
I'm not saying we're taking a deep dive into politics. I'm just clarifying, like, is that what
when I think of fundamental issues, I think just the things that you base your values and your morals on and how you live your life, I think is the way I interpret that.
Okay.
But
okay.
To each his own.
Yeah.
Answer it how you believe you should answer it.
I think that it's a hard question. Like if we're talking about morals and values, I think it's kind of difficult to have a relationship with somebody who has very different morals and values than you do. Like if you value or if I value integrity and honesty and, transparency, and you don't think that those things are a problem, or you don't think that those things are foundational, then I think that leaves some space for some real issues, some real like deep issues. That's just my thought on it.
No, I mean, I think that's perfectly understandable, and I agree. You look at maybe relationships that one person is a devout Catholic, let's say, and the other person is maybe, not religious or maybe not affiliated with the Catholic Church. And I'm sure that probably does cause friction. Not to say that it can't work, but that right there, two separate religions, it does probably bring up a lot of issues. And I think going back to what you said, morals and value, it's very hard for me to have all these different opinions about life and be with someone who shares the complete opposite views of those. It would be very hard to coexist. I mean, I'm just thinking back to, conversations that we've been a part of where family members are arguing about certain political beliefs and it drives a wedge between you.
It
And
does, because it becomes a them and us. Like, it's
right.
a very
Yeah,
alienated
you're either
kind
on my
of,
side or you're on their side
yeah.
type of
And if you're
thing.
on their side, then, you're the enemy, or you're the
Which
one
is
that's
not
doing
just
wrong.
it's not just applicable to politics either, I don't
No,
think.
no.
I'm thinking also about raising children, right?
Yeah.
It that's when I think those issues would really come to light, because I want to raise my child believing this or doing that. And if my spouse feels differently, I mean, who's right? How do you choose how to raise that child?
That's, yeah.
Some
I was going to say that. Like, I think it comes into a big problem whenever you're raising kids, because you have to be a united front when you're raising kids.
you
Like,
do.
you have to teach your children that, the parents are on the same side and they stand for the same thing. And, you love your children so much that you want to teach them good.
But I also think that you can have a difference of opinions on certain things. You're not going to agree
Yeah,
with your spouse on every single issue.
sure.
That's just crazy. We know you're not the same person. You
Right.
have your own, mind, and your own, especially the way you were raised, again, is going to play a
Yes.
huge part of it. So you were raised with a certain kind of values, probably a lot from what you brought from your parents. But then as you grew older, things that you developed on your own,
Mm-hmm.
and same with your spouse. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just also, being able to combine those,
Yeah.
and, pick and choose your
Make your own way.
battles, maybe. I I don't necessarily agree with, this way of parenting, but it, works for you. And I don't, it's not harming your child, but maybe you would handle it a little differently. But at the end of the day, if you are doing it in love, and you know that your spouse is just trying to, raise your children to be good humans and loving humans, I don't think that you can get mad about that.
That's something you can hang your hat on
Right,
at the end of the
exactly.
day. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree.
Any further
No,
thoughts on that?
I think
No?
we I
Yeah.
think we've
Let's
covered
let's
that.
pick another one. What would you want the next generation to learn about relationships from us?
Mm.
I'll start. So, I think a big thing is kind of defining the role of the man in the house, versus the woman. Um, traditionally, and we're getting away from it, but traditionally, the man has kind of been the one who makes more money, kind of is the one who has a career,
The
the
breadwinner.
breadwinner, that maybe isn't as involved in their children's lives, as the mother. And I think that is clearly not a good way to raise children. I think I personally have learned over the last several years, especially being, somebody who has worked from home and is now unemployed. So I have no excuse, but I have time to clean the house, and do laundry, and, take kids to events, and, do the dishes and things like that, and I know a lot of people still probably think that when they come home from work, like, oh, I expect dinner to be made. I expect you to have the house cleaned, and I don't think that, generations going forward are going to be living like that.
I think that we are, yeah, already seeing a shift in our generation. So I have, high hopes for even younger generations, because we are being their models and we're showing them, I think for the most part, that a relationship is a combined effort. And like you said, you don't have those strict roles that you have to play, that it's a team effort. I mean, I think to things even as small as like parent teacher conferences. I remember when Bliss had her first like pre-K parent teacher conference, and you asked me like what day and what time it was, and I told you, and I said, "Are you coming?" And you gave me like the craziest look, and you were like, "Yeah, why wouldn't
Like,
I?"
it's my kid, sure. I
And
want to
I
know how
was
they're
just
doing.
like, "Oh, okay. Okay, cool." And like from then on, like that's the expectation, that you're involved. And even when, we had to do like, some testing and stuff for Bliss, like you're always there. It's a team effort. And
And I even scheduled the last parent teacher conferences, both of them.
But you were also, oh, you weren't unemployed then.
No, I still had a job at that time.
But in my defense, like you had a little bit more wiggle room in your job, like time
In the
wise
schedule,
in
yeah.
the schedule. Yeah, exactly.
No, I like how though you said raising and are setting an example for raising your kids. Like they grow up in a house where it's just common that, dad does the laundry
Mm-hmm.
or, dad takes them to practice, whatever it is. And I think obviously nowadays a lot of people we don't have the homes where just one person works,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because financially who can afford that? Like we're almost forced to all have jobs now, and
Except you,
except me for now.
because you're unemployed.
But yeah, it has to be a team effort, right? You can't
Yeah,
expect one person to have a full-time job and cook and clean and take care of the kids. It's
that
just
would be two full time
there's
jobs.
not enough hours in the day, and the mental stress that would put you under
Mm-hmm.
would be just too much to handle.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of going back to like those roles, we have a son and a daughter. And so I think it's important for both of them to see the roles that we are playing of like our daughter doesn't see me in the kitchen, like, oh, I got to get dinner on the table cuz dad's going to be done with work and he's going to be hungry and going to want to come sit down or you know, things like that. And then it's important for our son to see, like, oh, dad's pitching in. Like, he's doing the laundry. He's, sweeping the floor. He's running you to whatever practice that you need to. Like, breaking those stereotypes of, I don't have to be in this box is so important.
Didn't we talk about this the other day where, like little gestures like that are kind of our love language? Like we appreciate that almost more than, a nice gift or anything like that. Like the fact that, you unloaded the dishwasher, and I acknowledge that and I say I'm thankful for that. Just the little things like that, speak volumes. And it's yeah, it'd be nice to go out and buy somebody a new, car or whatever and say, I love you so much. Here's a big bow on a Lexus. But, number one, that's not realistic. But number two, it doesn't, I mean, buying stuff is nice, but it's the little things in life that end up meaning more, I think, in
Mm-hmm.
the long run. And then again, setting that example for your children, like just our children watching us say, hey, I appreciate you making the bed, or doing the laundry. Thank you so much. Like, I think that again, it's just raising them up to expect that from their future mate as well.
Yeah. That brings up such a good point of like you're modeling what your child expects from their partner or what they deem that they're worthy of for their partner. So I mean, if you really get into it and you start thinking about it, you're like, oh my God, that's so much pressure to be able to do that. But if you just kind of make that a part of who you are and who your relationship is, and that might be difficult, right? Like if you're starting from a place that you don't just naturally do that. You might have to start to work on yourself and then to work on your relationship with your partner. But if you can set those expectations, like imagine, the partners that they'll have whenever they get older, or the self respect or the self worthiness that they'll have when they get older, to know that, they don't deserve to be treated in a poor way.
Well, and I think it's also just important for your children to see you interact with your spouse,
Hmm.
and spend time with them and hug them and show affection and just little things like
Like,
that.
I actually like and love you.
We're not just roommates. We're not just doing this, this thing called life, as roommates. But no, that, you are showing them that you love them through, your words, your actions.
Yeah.
But again, just modeling that behavior for your children, because I mean, it's tough. Children change everything. You have your relationship before children, and then you have your relationship after children. And I think back to when we found out we were pregnant, and naively we said, number one, we were still going to hang out with our friends all the time, which obviously that didn't happen. But two, we said we're still going to make time for each other. We still have to make time for each other. Our relationship has to come first, which I think is admirable. But then you get, into the thick of it, and sometimes the kids just have to come first. But, again, you're modeling a relationship for them that, they will come to expect when they grow older. So you still have to make time for your spouse. You can't, put your relationship on the back burner and say, well, I got to just focus on the kids, because as your, relationship gets kind of pushed farther and farther back, they will notice that. They will notice things, that you guys aren't, quite as close. And it's
Or
tough. It's a balancing act. I'm not saying that I have the answer to it, but I
we
think
haven't
we've
mastered
we've
that.
realized that we do have to make time for each other. And we talked last episode about a trip we took, just getting away, even if it's for a little date night or whatever, but just kind of getting away from your house or the kids to a setting where you can't be distracted. Because even when we've tried to set up like little times together at home with let's let the kids be on their iPad, inevitably something they'll come in and kind of interrupt that, which is fine. But again, trying to get a set time where you can just spend time focusing on each other, focusing on your relationship, talking. Just
Mm.
a lot of times we laugh about, when was the last time we got to have an uninterrupted conversation? Maybe that's why we started this podcast, so we could have these conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you said. And oh, I had a thought and it flew right out of my brain.
I
There it
know,
goes.
because I kept talking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man. It was a good one, but I don't know. If it pops in, I'll let you know.
Well, in the meantime, we can move on to the next card. Which, do you want to read that one?
Yeah. What does it mean to be a good partner? Oh gosh.
That's loaded, right?
It is
I mean, I
loaded.
feel
And
like
I
a
think
lot of what
it's
we've talked about already goes into becoming a good partner.
and I think it kind of it's for each individual person of what a good partner looks like. But just some foundational things would be, obviously somebody that communicates with you, that appreciates you, that values who you are, and maybe kind of is a little attuned to your personality and not your needs, as in like, oh, she could really use a coffee right now. Like, not like that, but your needs, as in, like you said earlier, hey, you've been really quiet this morning and I can tell that you're just not yourself. Is there something going on that, you'd like to talk about? A tune like that of like, hey, your energy is not, what it usually is.
Not to brag, but I'm pretty good at recognizing when something's bothering you.
A lot of times I feel like you can recognize what's wrong with me before I can recognize what's wrong with me. I'm getting better at it, but yeah, that's definitely not been a strength of mine. But yeah, you will. I recall from last year at Christmas time, and we had just lost our dog, Skeet, and I was just having a really rough day, and I just was really sad, and I thought I was, fake it till you make it. I was like, it'll be fine, and you came up to me and you put your arms around me, and you're just like, we were having you're having your siblings over because they were all in town, and you put your arm around me and you're like, hey, is it okay, that we're having people over? You don't seem like, yourself. And I was like, I really don't feel like myself. I was like, I'm really sad. I'm not in a good space. That doesn't mean that we don't need to have people over, but I was like, I would really appreciate if I could go for a run. And you were like, yeah, absolutely, whatever you have to do. So I went for a run, cried it out, felt much better when I got back, and you were like, you look better. You look much better.
I think that's important to like recognize when you cannot fix the problems all the time of your spouse, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to be there for them and let them kind of figure it out themselves, and try to, be as supportive as you can, and provide them whatever they need. But yeah, I think a lot of times early in our marriage, I was like, man, maybe you too, if one of us was going through something, I got to fix it. What can I do to fix this? Like, we're going to get this solved right now and make you feel better. And it doesn't work. Like, there's no quick Band-Aid that you can just put over a wound like losing a pet. Like, anyone who's had a dog, or a cat, or whatever, knows that it becomes part of your family. And for people who don't have pets, it may be kind of hard to fathom, like, the loss of that. Maybe they're like, how can you compare that to losing a family member? But they are a part of your life. So I knew that, you were struggling, and that was a really tough situation. So there was nothing I was going to say or do to fix it, but, letting you do the things that you needed to do to heal was kind of my way of solving the problem, I guess.
And you were like, through that whole time, you were so wonderful and so supportive, and never judged me for waking up in the middle of the night and sleeping on the couch, or, whatever, just, the sleepless nights, whatever it was, you were always so supportive with that. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks. But I think, yeah, going back to the question, being a good partner is being supportive and encouraging them in whatever they do. Thinking back to our relationship, there's been many times where you've encouraged me to do things that maybe I was on the fence about, and no matter what I decided to do, you were supportive of it. And I think vice versa. You've had a lot of things that you've ventured off and done, and I've tried to be that person that supports you and knows, hopefully that I have your back. And even in this endeavor that we're in right now, I've been unemployed for about a month, and I've had a lot of people already ask me, like, have you gotten another job? How's the job hunt going? And if I'm being honest, I've really not put a whole lot of effort into finding another job, because I put a lot of my effort into this, and you've been so supportive of that, because this is kind of what is making me happy right now. And if I have to find another job in a month or two, and you will kind of tell me that, hey, maybe we should start looking. And and it's not that I don't want to work or anything like that, but what I was doing before was not a passion. It wasn't something that was fulfilling me, and I think I'm just searching for that. And I'm not bringing in money right now, but again, you're being supportive of the fact that I'm trying to find myself and find what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think that's what being a good partner is, even through the tough times. It'd be really easy for you to say, hey, you're making decent money, you need to go out and find a job that makes us decent money so we can sustain that way of life. Because podcasting and YouTubing and stuff like that, it may never make you any money.
But I don't know. We aren't bougie people. As long as
you could probably tell by the way we're dressed if you're watching. I'm wearing a hoodie and a hat, but
right. But our needs are met, and we have our health, we have our children's health. So I mean, yeah. I appreciate you saying all of those nice things. And this is fun. This is super fun. I
hope everybody's enjoying this, and I encourage you to do this with your spouse. I think it just opens up a lot of conversation. It's easy to just kind of have those mundane conversations over and over again, like, how was your day? And you start to talk about something that happened at work, and that's fine. That's
it's part of your life.
It's part of your life, but really kind of dive in. Like, I don't know how often you just sit down and like, so let's talk about what you think makes a good partner. And so just doing things like this, I think, kind of opens up that dialogue. And we've only done 3 of these, and we've already taken up 20 something minutes doing it. So I think you can really dive deep into this, and hopefully learn some stuff, but also acknowledge things that your partner does for you and that you do for your partner, and leave the conversation feeling pretty good about yourself.
I think it's definitely a relationship builder. I mean, I don't think anybody, well, I don't know. Maybe you could answer them and start an argument, but it seems like it's more of a way. It's more of a way to, maybe bridge some part of your relationship that you feel like you're lacking. I know a lot of times in our marriage, I felt closer to you and I felt more distant from you, just, whatever's going on in life or whatever. And this is kind of a good way to bring it back to, like, hey, do you remember me? Your spouse? Like, how can we rebid or make that gap a little bit smaller between us?
Yeah, the busyness of life definitely gets in the way sometimes. We have all these things that fill our time, and not all of them are important. A lot of them are, we have to do. It's obligations, but it is nice to just take a few moments and just talk to your spouse and just kind of, revisit why you love each other so much.
True. True.
So I think we'll probably do this again sometime. I think this was fun. There's also other categories in this game. There's more than just relationships. So as
Mhm.
we start to talk about different things, I know that I would like to talk about the unemployed journey that I've been on, and there's questions in here that pertain to work and just kind of getting into jobs and not letting them define you,
Mhm.
define who you are. So. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed making it.
Me
Thanks,
too.
Les,
You're welcome,
for all the
Peanut.
conversation. Maybe we'll take this offline and maybe ask us a few more questions and dive into it even more. But thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
See you soon.